Good evening, everybody. Thank you for joining us once again for the Entrepreneur Power Hour Saturday Night Personal Development Series. Now, this is a call where we listen to a selected audio that either Kareem and I present on the Entrepreneur Power Hour. And right now, and welcome Miss Frances Richardson. So right now, the audios that we're going through in this series is from one of my favorite authors and one of the people that inspire me the most to strive for my dreams, Mr. Napoleon Hill. And tonight we're listening to Chapter 11 from Think and Grow Rich, The Mystery of Sex Transmutation. Now I'm just going to go through this a little bit before I start the recording. The mystery of sex transmutation is the 10th step toward riches. A lot of people think that sex transmutation, they have a lot of misconceptions about what it means. But the meaning of the word transmute is, in simple language, the changing or transferring of one element or form of energy into another. The emotion of sex brings into being a state of mind because of ignorance on the subject. This state of mind is generally associated with the physical and because of the improper influences. Okay, so which most people have been subjected. Unfortunately, they have the wrong idea. In acquiring knowledge of sex, things essentially physical have a highly biased perspective on it. So that's just what I wanted to say about that. So we're going to get started here. So I'm just going to get it, put my mic over here so you guys can hear. Let me know in the chat how the audio is, please, in case I have to make any adjustments, guys. Okay, so we're going to get started.
Chapter 11, The Mystery of Sex Transmutation, the 10th step toward riches. The meaning of the word transmute is, in simple language, the changing or transferring of one element or form of energy into another. The emotion of sex brings into being a state of mind. Because of the ignorance on the subject, this state of mind is generally associated with the physical, and because of improper influences to which most people have been subjected in acquiring knowledge of sex, things essentially physical have highly biased the mind. The emotion of sex has back of it the possibility of 3 constructive potentialities. They are the perpetuation of mankind, the maintenance of health. As a therapeutic agency, it has no equal. The transformation of mediocrity into genius through transmutation. Sex transmutation is simple and easily explained. It means the switching of the mind from thoughts of physical expression to thoughts of some other nature. Sex desire is the most powerful of human desires. When driven by this desire, men develop keenness of imagination, courage, willpower, persistence, and creative ability unknown to them at other times. So strong and impelling is the desire for sexual contact that men freely run the risk of life and reputation to indulge it. When harnessed and redirected along other lines, this motivating force maintains all of its attributes of keenness of imagination, courage, etc., which may be used as powerful creative forces in literature, art, or in any other profession or calling, including, of course, the accumulation of riches. The transmutation of sex energy calls for the exercise of willpower, to be sure, but the reward is worth the effort. The desire for sexual expression is inborn and natural. The desire cannot and should not be submerged or eliminated. It should be given an outlet through forms of expression which enrich the body, mind, and spirit of man. If not given this form of outlet through transmutation, it will seek outlets through purely physical channels. A river may be dammed and its waters controlled for a time, but eventually it will force an outlet. The same is true of the emotion of sex. It may be submerged and controlled for a time, but its very nature causes it to be ever-seeking means of expression. If it is not transmuted into some creative effort, it will find a less worthy outlet. Fortunate indeed is the person who has discovered how to give sex emotion an outlet through some form of creative effort, for he has, by that discovery, lifted himself to the status of a genius. Scientific research has disclosed these significant facts. The men of greatest achievement are men with highly developed sex natures, men who have learned the art of sex transmutation. The men who have accumulated great fortunes and achieved outstanding recognition in literature, art, industry, architecture, and the professions were motivated by the influence of a woman. The research from which these astounding discoveries were made went back through the pages of biography and history for more than 2,000 years. Wherever there was evidence available in connection with the lives of men and women of great achievement, it indicated most convincingly that they possessed highly developed sex natures. The emotion of sex is an irresistible force against which there can be no such opposition as an immovable body. When driven by this emotion, men become gifted with such a power for action. Understand this truth, and you will catch the significance of the statement that sex transmutation will lift one to the status of a genius. The emotion of sex contains the secret of creative ability. Destroy the sex glands, whether in man or beast, and you have removed the major source of action. For proof of this, observe what happens to any animal after it has been castrated. A bull becomes as docile as a cow after it has been altered sexually. Sex alteration takes out of the male, whether man or beast, all the fight that was in him. Sex alteration of the female has the same effect. The 10 mind stimuli. The human mind responds to stimuli through which it may be keyed up to high rates of vibration, known as enthusiasm, creative imagination, intense desire, etc. The stimuli to which the mind responds most freely are the desire for sex expression, love, a burning desire for fame, power, or financial gain, money, music, friendship between either those of the same sex or those of the opposite sex. A mastermind alliance based upon the harmony of two or more people who ally themselves for spiritual or temporal advance. Mutual suffering, such as that experienced by people who are persecuted. Autosuggestion, fear, narcotics, and alcohol. The desire for a sex expression comes at the head of the list of the stimuli, which most effectively step up the vibrations of the mind and start the wheels of physical action. 8 of these stimuli are natural and constructive. 2 are destructive. The list is here presented for the purpose of enabling you to make a comparative study of the major sources of mind stimulation. From this study, it will be readily seen that the emotion of sex is by great odds the most intense and powerful of all mind stimuli. This comparison is necessary as a foundation for proof of the statement that transmutation of sex energy may lift one to the status of a genius. Let us find out what constitutes a genius. Some wiseacre has said that a genius is a man who wears long hair, eats queer food, lives alone, and serves as a target for the joke makers. A better definition of a genius is a man who has discovered how to increase the vibrations of the thought to the point where he can freely communicate with sources of knowledge not available through the ordinary rate of vibration of thought. The person who thinks will want to ask some questions concerning this definition of genius. The first question will be, how may one communicate with sources of knowledge which are not available through the ordinary rate of vibration of thought? The next question will be, are there known sources of knowledge which are available only to genii? And if so, what are these sources, and exactly how may they be reached?
Hey guys, I'm going to pause the recording. I have to use the washroom. I will be right back.
We shall offer proof of the soundness of some of the more important statements made in this book, or at least we shall offer evidence through which you may secure your own proof through experimentation, and in doing so, we shall answer both of these questions. Genius is developed through the sixth sense. The reality of a sixth sense has been fairly well established. The sixth sense is creative imagination. The faculty of creative imagination is one which the majority of people never use during an entire lifetime, and if used at all, it usually happens by mere accident. A relatively small number of people use, with deliberation and purpose aforethought, the faculty of creative imagination. Those who use this faculty voluntarily and with understanding of its functions are genii. The faculty of creative imagination is the direct link between the finite mind of man and infinite intelligence. And all so-called revelations referred to in the realm of religion and all discoveries of basic or new principles in the field of invention take place through the faculty of creative imagination. When ideas or concepts flash into one's mind through what is popularly called a hunch, they come from one or more of the following sources. Infinite intelligence, one subconscious mind, wherein is stored every sense impression and thought impulse which ever reached the brain through any of the five senses. From the mind of some other person who has just released the thought or picture of the idea or concept through conscious thought, or from the other person's subconscious storehouse. There are no other known sources from which inspired ideas or hunches may be received. The creative imagination functions best when the mind is vibrating due to some form of mind stimulation at an exceedingly high rate. That is, when the mind is functioning at a rate of vibration higher than that of ordinary normal thought. When brain action has been stimulated through one or more of the 10 mind stimulants, it has the effect of lifting the individual far above the horizon of ordinary thought and permits him the envisioned distance, scope, and quality of thoughts not available on the lower plane, such as that occupied while one is engaged in the solution of the problems of business and professional routine. When lifted to this higher level of thought through any form of mind stimulation, an individual occupies relatively the same position as one who has ascended in an airplane to a height from which he may see over and beyond the horizon line which limits his vision while on the ground. Moreover, while on this higher level of thought, the individual is not hampered or bound by any of the stimuli which circumscribe and limit his vision while wrestling with the problems of gaining the three basic necessities of food, clothing, and shelter. He is in a world of thought in which the ordinary workaday thoughts have been as effectively removed as are the hills and valleys or other limitations of physical vision when he rises in an airplane. While on this exalted plane of thought, the creative faculty of the mind is given freedom for action. The way has been cleared for the sixth sense to function. It becomes receptive to ideas which could not reach the individual under any other circumstances. The sixth sense is the faculty which marks the difference between a genius. The creative faculty becomes more alert and receptive to vibrations originating outside the individual's subconscious mind the more this faculty is used, and the more the individual relies upon it and makes demands upon it for thought impulses. This faculty can be cultivated and developed only through use. That which is known as one's conscious operates entirely through the faculty of the sixth sense. The great artists, writers, musicians, and poets become great because they acquire the habit of relying upon the still small voice which speaks from within through the faculty of creative imagination. It is a fact well known to people who have keen imaginations that their best ideas come through so-called hunches. There is a great orator who does not attain to greatness until he closes his eyes and begins to rely entirely upon the faculty of creative imagination. When asked why he closed his eyes just before the climaxes of his oratory, he replied, "I do it because that I speak through ideas which come to me from within." One of America's most successful and best-known financiers followed the habit of closing his eyes for 2 or 3 minutes before making a decision. When asked why he did this, he replied, "With my eyes closed, I am able to draw upon a source of superior intelligence." The late Dr. Elmer R. Gates of Chevy Chase, Maryland, created more than 200 useful patents, many of them basic, through the process of cultivating and using the creative faculty. His method is both significant and interesting to one interested in attaining the status of genius, in which category Dr. Gates unquestionably belonged. Dr. Gates was one of the really great, though less publicized, scientists of the world. In his laboratory, he had what he called his personal communication room. It was practically soundproof and so arranged that all lights could be shut out. It was equipped with a small table on which he kept a pad of writing paper. In front of the table on the wall was an electric push button which controlled the lights. When Dr. Gates desired to draw upon the forces available to him through his creative imagination, he would go into this room, seat himself at the table, shut off the lights, and concentrate upon the known factors of the invention on which he was working, remaining in that position until ideas began to flash into his mind in connection with the unknown factors of the invention. On one occasion, ideas came through so fast that he was forced to write for almost 3 hours. When the thoughts stopped flowing and he examined his notes, he found they contained a minute description of principles which made not a parallel among the known data of the scientific world. Moreover, the answer to his problem was intelligently presented in those notes. In this manner, Dr. Gates completed over 200 patents, which had been begun but not completed by half-baked brains. Evidence of the truth of this statement is in the United States Patent Office. Dr. Gates earned his living by sitting for ideas for individuals and corporations. Some of the largest corporations in America paid him substantial fees by the hour for sitting for ideas. The reasoning faculty is often faulty because it is largely guided by one's accumulated experience. Not all knowledge which one accumulates through experience is accurate. Ideas received through the creative faculty are much more reliable for the reason that they come from sources more reliable than any which are available to the reasoning faculty of the mind. The major difference between the genius and the ordinary crank inventor may be found in the fact that the genius works through his faculty of creative imagination, while the crank knows nothing of this faculty. The scientific inventor, such as Mr. Edison and Dr. Gates, makes use of both the synthetic and the creative faculties of imagination. For example, the scientific inventor, or genius, begins an invention by organizing and combining the known ideas or principles accumulated through experience, through the synthetic faculty, the reasoning faculty. If he finds this accumulated knowledge to be insufficient for the completion of his invention, he then draws upon the sources of knowledge available to him through his creative faculty. The method by which he does this varies with the individual, but this is the sum and substance of his procedure. He stimulates his mind so that it vibrates on a higher than average plane, using one or more of the 10 stimulants or some other stimulant of his choice. He concentrates upon the known factors, the finished part of his invention, and creates in his mind a perfect picture of unknown factors, the unfinished part of his invention. He holds this picture in his mind until it has been taken over by the subconscious mind, then relaxes by clearing his mind of all thought, and waits for his answer to flash into his mind. Sometimes the results are both definite and immediate, and other times the results are negative, depending upon the development of the sixth sense or creative faculty. Mr. Edison tried out more than 10,000 different combinations of ideas through the synthetic faculty of his imagination before he tuned in through the creative faculty and got the answer which perfected the incandescent light. His experience was similar when he produced the talking machine. There is plenty of reliable evidence that the faculty of creative imagination exists. This evidence is available through accurate analysis of men who have become leaders in their respective callings without having had extensive educations. Lincoln was a notable example of a great leader who achieved greatness through the discovery and use of his faculty of creative imagination. He discovered and began to use this faculty as the result of the stimulation of love which he experienced after he met Anne Rutledge, a statement of the highest significance in connection with the study of the source of genius. The pages of history are filled with the records of great leaders whose achievements may be traced directly to the influence of women who aroused the creative faculties of their minds through the stimulation of sex desire. Napoleon Bonaparte was one of these. When inspired by his wife Josephine, he was irresistible and invincible. When his better judgment or reasoning faculty prompted him to put Josephine aside, he began to decline. His defeat and St. Helena were not far distant. If good taste would permit, we might easily mention scores of men well known to the American people who climbed to great heights of achievement under the stimulating influence of their wives, only to drop back to destruction after money and power went to their heads and they put aside the old wife for a new one. Napoleon was not the only man to discover that sex influence from the right source is more powerful than any substitute of expediency which may be created by mere reason. The human mind responds to stimulation. Among the greatest and most powerful of these stimuli is the urge of sex. When harnessed and transmuted, this driving force is capable of lifting men into that higher sphere of thought which enables them to master the sources of worry and petty annoyance which beset their pathway on the lower plane. Unfortunately, only the genii have made the discovery. Others have accepted the experience of sex urge without discovering one of its major potentialities, a fact which accounts for the great number of others as compared to the limited number of geni. For the purpose of refreshing the memory in connection with the facts available for the biographies of certain men, we here present the names of a few men of outstanding achievement, each of whom was known to have been of a highly sexed nature. The genius which was theirs undoubtedly found its source of power in transmuted sex energy. George Washington, Napoleon Bonaparte, William Shakespeare, Abraham Lincoln, Ralph Waldo Emerson, Robert Burns, Thomas Jefferson, Elbert Hubbard, Albert H. Gary, Oscar Wilde, Woodrow Wilson, John H. Patterson, Andrew Jackson, Enrico Caruso. Your own knowledge of biography will enable you to add to this list. Find, if you can, a single man in all history of civilization who achieved outstanding success in any calling, who was not driven by a well-developed sex nature. If you do not wish to rely upon biographies of men not now living, take inventory of those whom you know to be men of great achievement, and see if you can find one among them who is not highly sexed. Sex energy is the creative energy of all geni. There has never been and never will be a great leader, builder, or artist lacking in this driving force of sex. Surely no one will misunderstand these statements to mean that all who are highly sexed are geni. Man attains to the status of a genius only when and if he stimulates his mind so that it draws upon the forces available through the creative faculty of the imagination. Chief among the stimuli with which this stepping up of the vibrations may be produced is sex energy. The mere possession of this energy is not sufficient to produce a genius. The energy must be transmuted from desire for physical contact into some other form of desire and action before it will lift one to the status of a genius. Far from becoming geni because of great sex desires, the majority of men lower themselves through misunderstanding and misuse of this great force to the status of the lower animals. Why men seldom succeed before 40. I discovered from the analysis of over 25,000 people that men who succeed in an outstanding way seldom do so before the age of 40, and more often, they do not strike their real pace until they are well beyond the age of 50. The fact was so astounding that it prompted me to go into the study of its causes more carefully, carrying the investigation over a period of more than 12 years. This study disclosed the fact that the major reason why the majority of men who succeed do not begin to do so before the age of 40 to 50 is their tendency to dissipate their energies through overindulgence in physical expression of the emotion of sex. The majority of men never learn that the urge of sex has other possibilities, which far transcend in importance that of mere physical expression. The majority of those who make this discovery do so after having wasted many years at a period when the sex energy is at its height prior to the age of 45 to 50. This usually is followed by noteworthy achievement. The lives of many men up to and sometimes well past the age of 40 reflect a continued dissipation of energies which could have been more profitably turned into better channels. Their finer and more powerful emotions are sown widely to the four winds, and of this habit of the male grew the term sowing his wild oats. The desire for sexual expression is by far the strongest and most impelling of all the human emotions, and for this very reason, this desire, when harnessed and transmuted into action other than that of physical expression, may raise one to the status of a genius. One of America's most able businessmen frankly admitted that his attractive secretary was responsible for most of the plans he created. He admitted that her presence lifted him to the heights of creative imagination, such as he could experience under no other stimulus. One of the most successful men in America owes most of his success to the influence of a very charming young woman who has served as his source of inspiration for more than 12 years. Everyone knows the man to whom this reference is made, but not everyone knows the real source of his achievements. History is not lacking in examples of men who attained to the status of geni as the result of the use of artificial mind stimulus in the form of alcohol and narcotics. Edgar Allan Poe wrote The Raven while under the influence of liquor, dreaming dreams that mortal never dared to dream before. James Whitcomb Riley did his best writing while under the influence of alcohol. Perhaps it was thus he saw the order intermingling of the real and the dream, the mill above the river and the mist above the stream. Robert Burns wrote best when intoxicated. For old lang syne, my dear, will take a cup of kindness yet, for old lang syne. But let it be remembered that many such men have destroyed themselves in the end. Nature has prepared her own potions with which men may safely stimulate their minds so they vibrate on a plane that enables them to tune into fine and rare thoughts, which come from no man knows where. No satisfactory substitute for nature's stimulants has ever been found. It is a fact well known to psychologists that there is a very close relationship between sex desires and spiritual urges, a fact which accounts for the peculiar behavior of people who participate in the orgies known as religious revivals, common among the primitive types. The world is ruled and the destiny of civilization is established by the human emotions. People are influenced in their actions not by reason so much as by feelings. The creative faculty of the mind is set into action entirely by emotions and not by cold reason. The most powerful of all human emotions is that of sex. There are other mind stimulants, some of which have been listed, but not one of them, nor all of them combined, can equal the driving power of sex. A mind stimulant is any influence which will either temporarily or permanently increase the vibrations of thought. The 10 major stimulants described are those most commonly resorted to. Through these sources, one may commune with infinite intelligence, or enter at will the storehouse of the subconscious mind, either one's own or that of another person, a procedure which is all there is of genius. A teacher who has trained and directed the efforts of more than 30,000 salespeople made the astounding discovery that highly sexed men are the most efficient salesmen. The explanation is that the fact of personality known as personal magnetism is nothing more nor less than sex energy. Highly sexed people always have a plentiful supply of magnetism. Through cultivation and understanding, this vital force may be drawn upon and used to great advantage in the relationships between people. This energy may be communicated to others through the following media. The handshake. The touch of the hand indicates instantly the presence of magnetism, or the lack of it. The tone of voice. Magnetism, or sex energy, is the factor with which the voice may be colored or made musical and charming. Posture and carriage of the body. Highly sexed people move briskly and with grace and ease. The vibrations of thought. Highly sexed people mix the emotion of sex with their thoughts, or may do so at will, and in that way may influence those around them. Body adornment. People who are highly sexed are usually very careful about their personal appearance. They usually select clothing of a style becoming to their personality, physique, complexion, etc. When employing salesmen, the more capable sales manager looks for the quality of personal magnetism as the first requirement of a salesman. People who lack sex energy will never become enthusiastic nor inspire others with enthusiasm, and enthusiasm is one of the most important requisites in salesmanship, no matter what one is selling. The public speaker, orator, preacher, lawyer, or salesman who is lacking in sex energy is a flop as far as being able to influence others is concerned. Couple with this the fact that most people can be influenced only through an appeal to their emotions, and you will understand the importance of sex energy as a part of the salesman's native ability. Master salesmen attain the status of mastery in selling because they either consciously or unconsciously transmute the energy of sex into sales enthusiasm. In this statement may be found a very practical suggestion as to the actual meaning of sex transmutation. The salesman who knows how to take his mind off the subject of sex and direct it in sales effort with as much enthusiasm and determination as he would apply to its original purpose has acquired the art of sex transmutation, whether he knows it or not. The majority of salesmen who transmute their sex energy do so without being in the least aware of what they are doing or how they are doing it. Transmutation of sex energy calls for more willpower than the average person cares to use for this purpose. Those who find it difficult to summon willpower sufficient for transmutation may gradually acquire this ability. Though this requires willpower, the reward for the practice is more than worth the effort. The entire subject of sex is one with which the majority of people appear to be unpardonably ignorant. The urge of sex has been grossly misunderstood, slandered, and burlesqued by the ignorant and the evil-minded for so long that the very word sex is seldom used in polite society. Men and women who are known to be blessed, yes, blessed, with highly sexed natures are usually looked upon as being people who will bear watching. Instead of being called blessed, they are usually called cursed. Millions of people, even in this age of enlightenment, have inferiority complexes which they have developed because of this false belief that a highly sexed nature is a curse. These statements of the virtue of sex energy should not be construed as justification for the libertine. The emotion of sex is a virtue only when used intelligently and with discrimination. It may be misused, and often is, to such an extent that it debases instead of enriches both body and mind. The better use of this power is the burden of this chapter. It seemed quite significant to the author when he made the discovery that practically every great leader whom he had the privilege of analyzing was a man whose achievements were largely inspired by a woman. In many instances, the woman in the case was a modest, self-denying wife of whom the public had heard but little or nothing. In a few instances, the source of inspiration has been traced to the other woman. Perhaps such cases may not be entirely unknown to you. Intemperance in sex habits is just as detrimental as intemperance in habits of drinking and eating. In this age in which we live, an age which began with the World War, intemperance in habits of sex is common. This orgy of indulgence may account for the shortage of great leaders. No man can avail himself of the forces of this creative imagination while dissipating them. Man is the only creature on earth which violates nature's purpose in this connection. Every other animal indulges its sex nature in moderation and with purpose which harmonizes with the laws of nature. Every other animal responds to the call of sex only in season. Man's inclination is to declare open season. Every intelligent person knows that stimulation in excess through alcoholic drink and narcotics is a form of intemperance which destroys the vital organs of the body, including the brain. Not every person knows, however, that overindulgence in sex expression may become a habit as destructive and as detrimental to creative effort as narcotics or liquor. A sex-mad man is not essentially different than a dope-mad man. Both have lost control over their faculties of reason and willpower. Sexual overindulgence may not only destroy reason and willpower, but it may also lead to either temporary or permanent insanity. Many cases of hypochondria, imaginary illness, grow out of habits developed in ignorance of the true function of sex. From these brief references to the subject, it may be readily seen that ignorance on the subject of sex transmutation forces stupendous penalties upon the ignorant on the one hand, and withholds them from equally stupendous benefits on the other. Widespread ignorance on the subject of sex is due to the fact that the subject has been surrounded with mystery and beclouded by dark silence. The conspiracy of mystery and silence has had the same effect upon the minds of young people that the psychology of prohibition had. The result has been increased curiosity and desire to acquire more knowledge on this verboten subject, and to the shame of all lawmakers and most physicians, by training best qualified to educate youth on the subject, information has not been easily available. Seldom does an individual enter upon highly creative effort in a field of endeavor before the age of 40. The average man reaches the period of his greatest capacity to create between 40 and 60. These statements are based upon analysis of thousands of men and women who have been carefully observed. They should be encouraging to those who fail to arrive before the age of 40, and to those who become frightened at the approach of old age and the 40-year mark. The years between 40 and 50 are, as a rule, the most fruitful. Man should approach this age not with fear and trembling, but with hope and eager anticipation. If you want evidence that most men do not begin to do their best work before the age of 40, Study the records of the most successful men known to the American people, and you will find it. Henry Ford had not hit his pace of achievement until he passed the age of 40. Andrew Carnegie was well past 40 before he began to reap the reward of his efforts. James J. Hill was still running by a telegraph key at the age of 40. His stupendous achievements took place after that age. Biographies of American industrialists and financiers are filled with evidence that the period from 40 to 60 is the most productive age of man. Between the ages of 30 and 40, man begins to learn, if he ever learns, the art of sex transmutation. This discovery is generally accidental, and more often than otherwise, the man who makes it is totally unconscious of his discovery. He may observe that his powers of achievement have increased around the age of 35 to 40, but in most cases, he is not familiar with the cause of this change. That nature begins to harmonize the emotions of love and sex in the individual between the ages of 30 and 40, so that he may draw upon these great forces and apply them jointly as stimuli to action. Sex alone is a mighty urge to action, but its forces are like a cyclone. They are often uncontrollable. While the emotion of love begins to mix itself with the emotion of sex, the result is calmness of purpose, poise, and accuracy of judgment and balance. One person who has attained to the age of 40 is so unfortunate as to be unable to analyze these statements and to corroborate them by his own experience. When driven by his desire to please a woman based solely upon the emotion of sex, a man may be, and usually is, capable of great achievement, but his actions may be disorganized, distorted, and totally destructive. When driven by this desire to please a woman based upon the motive of sex alone, a man may steal, cheat, and even commit murder. When the emotion of love is mixed with the emotion of sex, that same man will guide his actions with more sanity, balance, and reason. Criminologists have discovered that the most hardened criminals can be reformed through the influence of a woman's love. There is no record of a criminal having been reformed solely through the sex influence. These facts are well known, but their cause is not. Reformation comes, if at all, through the heart or the emotional side of man, not through his head or reasoning side. Reformation means a change of heart. It does not mean a change of head. A man may, because of reason, make certain changes in his personal conduct to avoid the consequences of undesirable effects, but genuine reformation comes only through a change of heart, through a desire to change. Love, romance, and sex are all emotions capable of driving men to heights of superachievement. Love is the emotion which serves as a safety valve and ensures balance, poise, and constructive effort. When combined, these three emotions may lift one to an altitude of a genius. There are genii, however, who know but little of the emotion of love. Most of them may be found engaged in some form of action which is destructive, or at least not based upon justice and fairness towards others. If good taste would permit, a dozen genii could be named in the field of industry and finance who ride ruthlessly over the rights of their fellow men. They seem totally lacking in conscience. The reader can easily supply his own list of such men. The emotions are states of mind. Nature has provided man with a chemistry of the mind, which operates in a manner similar to the principles of chemistry of matter. It is a well-known fact, through the aid of chemistry of matter, a chemist may create a deadly poison by mixing certain elements, none of which are in themselves harmful, in the right proportions. The emotions may, likewise, be combined so as to create a deadly poison. The emotions of sex and jealousy, when mixed, may turn a man into an insane beast. The presence of one or more of the destructive emotions in the human mind through the chemistry of the mind sets up a poison which may destroy one's sense of justice and fairness. In extreme cases, the presence of any combination of these emotions in the mind may destroy one's reason. The road to genius consists of the development, control, and use of sex, love, and romance. Briefly, the process may be stated as follows. Encourage the presence of these emotions as the dominating thoughts in one's mind, and discourage the presence of all destructive emotions. The mind is a creature of habit. It thrives upon the dominating thoughts fed it. Through the faculty of willpower, one may discourage the presence of any emotion and encourage the presence of any other. Control of the mind through the power of will is not difficult. Control comes from persistence and habit. The secret of control lies in understanding the process of transmutation. When any negative emotion presents itself in one's mind, it can be transmuted into a positive or constructive emotion by the simple procedure of changing one's thoughts. There is no other road to genius than through voluntary self-effort. A man may attain to great heights of financial or business achievement solely by the driving force of sex energy, but history is filled with evidence that he may, and usually does, carry with him certain traits of character which rob him of the ability to either hold or enjoy his fortune. This is worthy of analysis, thought, and meditation, for it states a truth, the knowledge of which may be helpful to women as well as men. Ignorance of this has caused thousands of people their privilege of happiness, even though they possessed riches. The emotions of love and sex leave their unmistakable marks upon the features. Moreover, these signs are so visible that all who wish may read them. The man who is driven by the storm of passion based upon sex desires alone plainly advertises that fact to the entire world by the expression of his eyes and the lines of his face. The emotion of love, when mixed with the emotion of sex, softens, modifies, and beautifies the facial expression. No character analyst is needed to tell you this. You may observe it for yourself. The emotion of love brings out and develops the artistic and the aesthetic nature of man. It leaves its impress upon one's very soul, even after the fire has been subdued by time and circumstance. Memories of love never pass. They linger, guide, and influence long after the source of stimulation has faded. There is nothing new in this. Every person who has been moved by genuine love knows that it leaves enduring traces upon the human heart. The effect of love endures because love is spiritual in nature. The man who cannot be stimulated to great heights of achievement by love is hopeless. He is dead, though he may seem to live. Even the memories of love are sufficient to lift one to a higher plane of creative effort. The major force of love may spend itself and pass away, like a fire which has burned itself out, but it leaves behind indelible marks as evidence that it passed that way. Its departure often prepares the human heart for a still greater love. Go back into your yesterdays and times and bathe your mind in the beautiful memories of past love. It will soften the influence of the present worries and annoyances. It will give you a source of escape from the unpleasant realities of life, and maybe, who knows, your mind will yield to you during this temporary retreat into the world of fantasy, ideas, or planes, which may change the entire financial or spiritual status of your life. If you believe yourself unfortunate because you have loved and lost, perish the thought. One who has truly loved can never lose entirely. Love is whimsical and temperamental. Its nature is ephemeral and transitory. It comes when it pleases and goes away without warning. Accept and enjoy it while it remains, but spend no time worrying about its departure. Worry will never bring it back. Dismiss also the thought that love never comes but once. Love may come and go times without number, for there are no two love experiences which affect one in just the same way. There may be, and there usually is, one love experience which leaves a deeper imprint on the heart than all others, but all love experiences are beneficial, except to the person who becomes resentful and cynical when love makes its departure. There should be no disappointment over love, and there would be none if people understood the difference between the emotions of love and sex. The major difference is that love is spiritual, and sex is biological. No experience which touches the human heart with the spiritual force can possibly be harmful, except through ignorance or jealousy. Love is, without question, life's greatest experience. It brings one into communion with infinite intelligence. When mixed with the emotions of romance and sex, it may lead one far up the ladder of creative effort. The emotions of love, sex, and romance are sides of the eternal triangle of achievement-building genius. Nature creates genii through no other force. Love is an emotion with many sides, shades, and colors. The love which one feels for parents or children is quite different from that which one feels for one's sweetheart. The one is mixed with the emotion of sex, while the other is not. The love which one feels in true friendship is not the same as that felt for one's sweetheart, parents, or children, but it too is a form of love. Then there is the emotion of love for things inanimate, such as the love of nature's handiwork. But the most intense and burning of all these various kinds of love is that experienced in the blending of emotions of love and sex. Marriages not blessed with the eternal affinity of love, properly balanced and proportioned with sex, cannot be happy ones, and seldom endure. Love alone will not bring happiness in marriage, nor will sex alone. When these two beautiful emotions are blended, marriage may bring about a state of mind closest to the spiritual that one may ever know on this earthly plane. When the emotion of romance is added to those of love and sex, the obstructions between the finite mind of man and infinite intelligence are removed. Then a genius has been born. What a different story is this than those usually associated with the emotion of sex. Here is an interpretation of the emotion which lifts it out of the commonplace and makes it of potter's clay in the hands of God, from which he fashions all that is beautiful and inspiring. It is an interpretation which would, when properly understood, bring harmony out of the chaos which exists in too many marriages. The disharmonies often expressed in the form of nagging may usually be traced to a lack of knowledge on the subject of sex. Where love, romance, and the proper understanding of the emotion and function of sex abide, there is no disharmony between married people. Fortunate is the husband whose wife understands the true relationship between the emotions of love, sex, and romance. When motivated by this holy triumvirate, no form of labor is burdensome, because even the most lowly form of effort takes on the nature of a labor of love. It is a very old saying that a man's wife may either make him or break him, but the reason is not always understood. The making and breaking is the result of the wife's understanding or lack of understanding of the emotions of love, sex, and romance. Despite the fact that men are polygamous by the very nature of their biological inheritance, it is true that no woman has as great an influence on a man as his wife, unless he is married to a woman totally unsuited to his nature. If a woman permits her husband to lose interest in her and become more interested in other women, it is usually because of her ignorance or indifference toward the subjects of sex, love, and romance. This statement presupposes, of course, that genuine love once existed between a man and his wife. The facts are equally applicable to a man who permits his wife's interest in him to die. Married people often bicker over a multitude of trivialities. If these are analyzed accurately, the real cause of the trouble will often be found to be indifference or ignorance on these subjects. Man's greatest motivating force is his desire to please woman. The hunter who excelled during prehistoric days before the dawn of civilization did so because of his desire to appear great in the eyes of woman. Man's nature has not changed in this respect. The hunter of today brings home no skins of wild animals, but he indicates his desire for her favor by supplying fine clothes, motor cars, and wealth. Man has the same desire to please woman that he had before the dawn of civilization. The only thing that has changed is his method of pleasing. Men who accumulate large fortunes and attain to great heights of power and fame do so mainly to satisfy their desire to please women. Take women out of their lives, and great wealth would be useless to most men. It is this inherent desire of man to please woman which gives woman the power to make or break a man. The woman who understands man's nature and tactfully caters to it need have no fear of competition from other women. Men may be giants with indomitable willpower when dealing with other men, but they are easily managed by the women of their choice. Most men will not admit that they are easily influenced by the women they prefer because it is in the nature of the male to want to be recognized as the stronger of the species. Moreover, the intelligent woman recognizes this manly trait and very wisely makes no issue of it. Some men know they are being influenced by the women of their choice, their wives, sweethearts, mothers, or sisters, but they tactfully refrain from rebelling against the influence because they are intelligent enough to know that no man is happy or complete without the modifying influence of the right woman. The man who does not recognize this important truth deprives himself of the power which has done more to help men achieve success than all other forces combined.
Done. Can you hear me, Dan?
Yep.
Yep, we hear you.
Good.
Hey, you.
Hey. So, what do you think, Dan?
Oh God, pick on me first. Okay. I wasn't ready for that. I think pretty much a lot of what he says is true. That we as men do have that desire to please the woman in our life and to show that we're capable of being the man, for lack of a better way of saying it. You know, to provide and give them the things and the things we want. Because for us, if you look at even society, if you look at most single guys and the way they live, they're happy with having a roof overhead, a bed to sleep in, clothes, but everything's kind of a lot of times in chaos and this and that, and the drive and direction might be inside of them, but it's not kind of guided or put in a direction that will help them reach their potential. So I think that having the right woman and influence in your life can definitely, is right, can make or break a man. And when you understand the power that is there between the two, and when both sides understand it and work together in that realm, they can become a pretty powerful and formidable couple and can attain whatever they desire to attain.
Yeah, I agree. That's good. I think that's one of the main motivational forces behind why I'm working so hard, is because when I meet the right person, the right woman, or my girlfriend in Mexico, I really want her to know that I can take care of her. That she doesn't have to worry about money. Because women are the ones that do all the childbearing and the raising, right? They have a greater responsibility than we do. So I think their psychology isn't so much directed at achievement as ours is. Like men, there's a lot of successful women in history, but there's definitely more men that have invented and created things. And a lot of that, I believe, is because of what Napoleon Hill was talking about in this chapter. With a highly sexed nature, you're going to do things. You're going to go for stuff. You're going to go for whatever you really want to do. People that don't have highly sexed natures, and I know a few of these people, are very, very. What's the word I'm looking for? It's like they're just. I don't know. They're not
driven.
No, not at all. Not
apathetic.
At all. Yeah. And that to me is worse than somebody who's highly sexed. But I guess some people that are highly sexed probably overindulge. I used to, before I knew the power that emotion had. But I mean, I'm an extremely sexed person. So I think that a lot of my creative motivation comes from that, very, very much so.
I thought of you during that specific part of the speech.
Yeah. A lot of it comes from,
Like I always said, wrap it before you tap it.
well, you don't have to worry about that. The point I'm making is that people that are highly sexed have a lot more creative intelligence than those who don't.
Yep.
So
Go
if you
to
don't,
church on Sunday to pray for cop failure for the Wild Uchi showed on Sunday, Saturday.
yeah, I think for me personally though, it's more pointing to that I have to use that drive for achievement, and that's what we're doing. That's what I'm doing. Um, so I mean, it is very, very vital that we learn the difference between using it creatively or destructively. And I know for a fact that sex without emotion is destructive because I've engaged in both. And it was destructive when there was no love involved, and I felt very emotionally drained and used. And even though that was not the intention of either of us, that's just how it felt. And so I think sex in our society today is very, very misrepresented. And we have to work to change that, because that's what Napoleon Hill's talking about, is how powerful that desire is. You can transmute that energy into creative power.
Yes, I fully
So
agree.
that's what I think.
I was going to add to it. I think that people aren't necessarily driven. They just don't understand what that energy is that's inside them, that's trying to come out. It's like he says, if you don't understand it or you don't know what it's about, you use it for the wrong reasons, and therefore it's ultimately destructive.
Yeah.
And why you go down those paths. But I also believe that, and I think a lot more women are more in tune to the nature of what power they have over men, and do use it and throw it out there. It's us men who don't understand the balance and understand that a lot of times women want that security, that feeling safe, that needing to feel that they're taken care of, and so that's where they're coming from. And we look at it as them trying to be powerful, dominating this, that, the other thing, and we misread it and misunderstand it, instead of taking it and realizing, oh, okay, they're letting us know this is what they're needing and looking for. Let's work together and take that energy and help me get to where I need to be, so I can provide those things and find that outlet, or find that place where you can feel comfortable and safe and secure. And that's, I think, because we as men, we need to have something that will give us that direction and that direction to go. Because if we don't know where to go, we just kind of there until.
Absolutely. Yeah, and for me, like I said, it took me a long time to figure out who's Chris Peters, and meeting Kareem and starting the Power Hour, and then I look at where we were just 2 years ago, sitting in a room, just me and him on camera, but the idea was there, the dream was there, the vision was there, and now we've got these $1 million people, like these mentors that are helping $1 million businesses, helping us, paying attention to what we're doing, and seeing that we have the persistence, the desire, and the vision, and the skill, and the philanthropy, and the people skills. I mean, otherwise, if we didn't have all that, nobody would be here, right? So, I mean, that's why I don't worry about how anymore. And you can't worry about how. I will say that right now. If you worry about how, you're not going to do anything. You just do it. And then you learn along the way, okay, well, what's working? Is this working? Okay, let's remove that piece from the puzzle. Let's bring a new piece into the puzzle. But the core foundation has to stay the same. And that all starts from the desire that I had with Kareem to start our own business. And we're like, you know what? I'm sick of mentoring for free. I'm sick of branding an ebook. I'm sick of trying to sell health products. MLM is a joke. It doesn't work. And here we are. You know, we're going to be building $1 million business with Rockstar Entrepreneurial Starters. And we're committed to that work, to working that hard, to becoming worth that kind of money by being sincere in our service, by innovating, adapting, learning the needs of our clients, constantly honing our skills and getting better, and being of service to people. And that's all you have to do to become wealthy, is be of service to others. That's all you have to do, and help other people get what they want. It's so simple. But I think our ego gets in the way, and our ego tells us that, well, it's not happening now. And I believe me, I am guilty of being impatient, and I have to develop that skill, because intemperance and impatience is going to resist what I'm trying to attract. It's going to create resistance. So I have to open my heart and go, you know what? Kareem's here, and he, sometimes I have a really bad attitude if I'm having a bad day. And Kareem could have given up on me a long time ago, but he didn't. And I told him the other day how grateful I am, and grateful for all of you that you're here believing in us and supporting us. And that means so much to me, Dan, Fran, Carl, everybody who comes here. It means the world to me, because what that tells me is that we're doing something right. And that we're inspiring hearts and minds. We're inspiring people, and people are noticing. And that's the greatest reward of all. The financial stuff, yeah, I mean, that's going to be great, but the biggest reward is the spiritual compensation and the ability to help other people. That's the biggest reward for me. Fran, Kareem, anybody else? Carl? Where the hell is Kareem?
I just hope I'm not too loud.
No, you're good.
No, you're fine.
Because the radio's way out in the other room. So
that's okay. Can hear it a little bit, but it's not overpowering your it's not overpowering your voice, and it's not creating any feedback on your microphone, so it's okay.
All right, cool. All right, we all know, and that's one of the superpowers of the world is sexual transmutation. I mean, without that, we wouldn't have the drive, as we wouldn't even have the want to, I guess you could say. But it doesn't always take that. It takes that, but it also takes the internal third eye to be in focused on what you're looking to do. I mean, it's not like that has to take charge of your life, having sex, because it isn't that way. You can always be creative and whatever without that. It's just whether you're in tune with your own self, I think, is one of the things. You know, if you're sitting there in left field all the time, you're in left field.
That's right.
If you're sitting there in the center field and you're catching the ball from all the time, whatever, you know, I mean, that's another thing, you know. I mean, you got to be focused on what you're doing. I mean, I think all these people could have actually done exactly what they did without that. But that is a very strong driving force. There's no doubt in my mind that without that, the clarity, I don't think, would be there, because I think that kind of sets the pace for clarity in the mind, that you're safe and secure, you're in your mind, you're satisfied, I guess, with where you are or what you're doing. But like I said, getting back, it always comes back to how in tune your mind is with your desire and passion of what you want.
Exactly.
If you don't have that driving passion, you might just well hang up the phone and say, I'm done.
That's right. You got it. But
it's the passion. I mean, I still have passion with or without sexual transmutation. You know what I'm saying? I still have that driving force to say I'm going to succeed no matter what. But I sometimes think the clarity is not as clear to the mind. So there might be some fog, that, you know what I'm saying? Like the
Right.
movie The Fog, you know, in your mind.
Well, if you got a nagging headache or a booming toothache, you got to get rid of that before you can concentrate.
That's very
Well,
true.
I don't anymore. I had 2 of them yanked, and I didn't feel overly, but
Yeah.
it's still not feeling too well to brush, but
Yeah.
it's always going to be tender. But anyways, I'm going to move back out and see if there's anybody else that has something to say. But
Thanks, Carl.
Yep.
Kareem, you're outside.
Yes, I am.
Cool.
It's getting hot, so I need.
Yeah, no, that's fine, man. I figured you might have went outside.
Yeah, I actually sometimes prefer to do power hour outside or just work because it feels better. But honestly, what he was talking about, it is really hard to have a successful business life without having a successful relationship and family life. Doesn't mean you can't work on one at the time or simultaneously, but the way I see it is, yes, your secretary can inspire you, beautiful, or your girlfriend or your wife or whoever it is in your life, and that is a big driving force. I'd be lying to say that, you know, my family and my girlfriend are not driving forces in what I do day to day. But the other side of that is making sure that it doesn't consume everything, so
right.
I can focus on what I need to do.
That's right.
And sometimes it gets tough because it gets overwhelming, and that to me is the sexual part is a release from the craziness and then being able to relax. That's what I really got out of this, and I like it. So my approach to all of this is to have a good sexual life, but be detached. And I don't mean that in a negative way, detached as in robotic. I mean that as you have a great relationship, but you're not of the world and you're trying to reach a higher purpose. That's my take.
That's good. I agree. But I also think that, you know, when he talked about love and its departure, I think that's why sometimes, Kareem, I talk to you about Janelle Stills, because she's left such a huge area of my soul was affected by her. And I don't think there's going to be a day that goes by that I don't miss her.
I mean,
you know,
There won't. It'll get easier, but it's not ever going to go away.
that's how I look at it. That's what happened with all my. I'd be lying to say, like, does it ever pop in my mind, you know, an X, and I think, oh, I could have done A, B, and C different. How would it look? And if I did this, what would be the outcome? And
hey, Leon.
I'm not gonna lie.
Yeah, I mean, what it is for me though is that I know that I can't stay trapped in that emotional state because I get very depressed.
Yeah.
I can't stay in that state of, okay, well, what could I have done differently? Because it doesn't matter what I could have done differently. What matters is how I respond now to what I'm doing now. I have no way of revisiting things that I could have changed to make that relationship work. There's nothing I can do, and I think that's the biggest letdown, is that there's nothing I can do, and I don't like not having control like that. I think that's where a lot of my fear, you could say, comes from being with a woman, is not having that control of what I could have done differently, because it's done and over with. So I'm really careful now with the way that I handle myself in relationships. Like this current woman I'm with, she can get very, very, very paranoid and scared, but she's just paranoid because she's so far away, and I get that. But she can be very, very, very mean, and I don't mean like she's malicious. She's doing it to test me. She's doing it because she doesn't know how I work yet. She doesn't know how my mind works. She doesn't know how I work. So she's just firing off things to see if I'm still going to love her, because she's got this defense wall up out of past experience because she's scared. And that's the way it is. When we're scared, we become defensive. We become very rude and belligerent. We say things we don't mean, and I've come to finally understand where that comes from. It's not an attack on me. It's them. It's where they are at that moment in time, and that's where. So I'm never going to take that stuff personally.
Well, I think that goes back into what he was saying
Go ahead,
about
Dan. Yeah.
how how to use and look and understand sex transmutation and use it for the good. And you can't, we don't have the ability to do deja vu and go back and relive or be a part of something from the past. I think that's why he was talking about, love can still have an influence, but once it's gone, but it can still have an influence on you and have an impact. But it's what you do with that impact and how you treat it, and use that energy and that force from how you felt and bring that into what you're involved with now, and the relationship you're building now, to build and change those things, so that way she can have the best brought out in her, and therefore she brings out the best in you, and you two together are working towards that higher level vibration and that level to achieve that greatness that's within the two of you together, and to strive forward. And I think that's part of what he was getting to, is that's how people who have learned and understood and learned how to understand how that works, and has used that positively to move forward, rather than letting it override or be something that just is to feel their sexual urges, for lack of a better way of saying it.
That's true. No,
but
that's exactly it. Yeah.
If we understand, oh, okay, I'm feeling this way, it's because I'm needing to either, connect with my partner and go to a different level. And that's why he said, I think when you do it in general love and desire and want to be with that, that's like he says, that's when you get closest to the spiritual creator that created us. Infinite intelligence, God, however you look at it. And that's where you can tap into those answers, those dreams, those flashes, hunches, whatever, and you can take that and go forward from there. It's when you use it outside of that realm, that's when it's destructive. And I think
well, of course, because sex is a bond. It's a sacred bond of a soul. Your soul is unifying with another person's soul, because your 7 chakras are aligning. You're merging, and that's why
Give me 5 minutes.
Go ahead. Oh, sorry, Fran.
No, I'm sorry. I have background noise.
Okay. That's why when I was indulging in sleeping with all those women, I just wow, enough messages. Twitter.
Yeah, Fran,
Okay.
it's
I mean that's why when I was with all those women, I didn't feel good about myself after. I didn't feel like I had accomplished anything. I satisfied some urges and made her feel incredible. But outside of that, what came of it? I mean, nothing. There was nothing after that, and it always felt like that I was leaving a piece of me behind that I could have taken and built myself up better with it. I was leaving a piece of me with somebody else that I probably was never going to talk to again. After the fling was over, I was never going to talk to these women again. Some of them I still have talked to here and there, but that's a piece of me that I've left with somebody and gave away so easily.
Yeah.
And I've disciplined myself not to do that anymore. I've disciplined myself where just because I see, for lack of a better word, there's pussy everywhere, I'm not completely mesmerized by that anymore. What I'm looking for in a female, first and foremost, is her mind, her spirit. What's she passionate about? What does she want in life? How does she deal with other people? Does she have a good personality? Is she supportive? Does she have a positive personality, or is she a negative, gold digging, malicious whatever. And then that's that when I was dating that stripper, that's exactly how she was. And I wanted to see the good in her. And I was like, man, this chick could be really cool. And the fact that I watched her dance for years and then I was sleeping with her, it was like a fantasy that came true for me. But she's got all these problems a mile long from that lifestyle. And I was just like, man, I can't deal with that.
In other words, the packaging was pretty, but the insides was rotten.
I'm looking at it like that.
That kind of said it all, Dan.
Yes.
I think there's the issue that I'm looking at or that I'm hearing is you associated sex with a certain thing of a certain sensation of happiness, and to be happy, I have to have it. Well, the hard part is when you associate a certain sensation with happiness, then you try and stay in that state all the time. So effectively, you turn something that's really good, like sex or eating or whatever it is, and it's a pleasurable experience, into pain. The hard part that I realized is that the demand for permanence of pleasure doesn't exist, and that the short sensations make me appreciate more. So ultimately, the way I see it is, as things change, the demand for permanence, whether it be of a certain sensation or certain experience, is the cause of a lot of suffering.
That's very
But
true.
if we can let go of that and accept, something we can, our hang-ups,
Gentlemen, the conversation has been intriguing and I've enjoyed it, but I must say goodbye.
All right.
Alrighty.
Good night, friend.
Thank you, guys.
Good night. We'll see you Tuesday.
Bye-bye.
Okay. Bye-bye. Yeah, but I think that when you're in love, that's something you don't ever want to lose, because it takes you to the highest form of being you can possibly be in. And I know, because I've been there. And there's nothing in the world like it. There isn't. I mean, I get that same. However, I get that same power when I listen to Slipknot, and that's kind of how I compare music and love. That's the same way I feel about metal. It's like I get that same feeling of oneness, that feeling of appreciation and gratification and power is from Slipknot. And
the way I'm looking at it is, a Slipknot song isn't actually all that long, especially if you compare it to Metallica songs. Some of them are, but that butterflies in the feeling stomach, that oneness, that like I'm on top of the world, I love that feeling. However, if I had to I was always demanding that I have to be in that, I have to be running through that, I would get worn out really, really quick. So the really beautiful thing about it is that it takes its course, and it's, even though it may echo forever, it's not experienced forever. And that's what really makes it of value. If I had forever to live, well, creating a business with you and Sean and Isaac and other people wouldn't be a priority. I'd say, I have 500 years to live. Let me waste 20, 30, 40 of them. But no, I have a short experience, so let's get it on. Let's get going.
Let's make the best of it. Exactly. And I think that's the difference between people that want achievement and those who are just satisfied with the status quo. They think they have, like my roommate, perfect example. He thinks he has all the time in the world when he doesn't. And it just, there's no sense of impedance. There's no sense of urgency. There's no sense of there's no action there. I just feel like there's this void. And last night we were arguing about cancer and different treatments and the fact that I know there's a cure for it out there. And then Madison was here and we were talking about love and stuff. We got into really deep stuff. And then Dave says, I'm the wrong guy to talk to about this because I'm logical, not emotional. And I said, and I just about said, that's your problem right there. But anyway, long story short, I agree with what you're saying, Kareem, and I'm going to thank Dan, Leon, Carl, and Fran for being here tonight. Leon, thank you for requesting us to do some work for you. That's going to be really cool, man, and we're looking forward to hearing what you want us to do. And I will see everybody. We're going to be back here Tuesday night at 7:30 Eastern for the Entrepreneur Power Hour Tuesday night mastermind. I'm not sure what we're doing this week. Either Ricardo Garcia might be coming back to talk more about some software, or Kareem and I are going to come up with some really cool subject, or we want to hear from you guys, either on Facebook or Twitter. What do you guys want to talk about? And that could be Dan, Leon, Carl. Think of some stuff and let us know if you have some topics in mind, and we'll brainstorm and we'll get them aired on the show for you guys. So I want to thank you guys, and we'll see you next week. Thank you guys, and we'll see you next week.